drug abuse, cancer,
measles, diabetes, AIDS, cancer.
Good evening once again, and welcome to another live Doctrine Call program. It is a pleasure, as always, to be with you every Tuesday evening at this time. And of course, we welcome our viewers on GBN Television 7 and 11, our listeners on K105 FM, and of course, our friends on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. We welcome you all. And hey, folks, as we told you last week, just before we wrapped, we have a very interesting program lined up for you this evening. Of course, continuing with the topic of diabetes, but we will look a little deeper at the different modalities, the trends, and of course the successes that we've achieved over the years. All right, of course, with time, experts like Dr. Matthias and others continue to work hard to, come up with very interesting ways of dealing with diabetes, and of course also treating the condition. And of course, he's with us this evening. We will be bringing him on in just a moment. So we welcome you, and of course we encourage you to call someone, call a friend, let them know that the program is on, and it's important that they join us, especially if you are diabetic or pre-diabetic. You need to get the information to know what to do to deal with it so you can continue to live a normal life. So it is a good time to welcome, of course, Dr. Nixon. She's with us, and Dr. Matthias. We'll start with Dr. Matthias. Dr. Matthias, good evening and welcome back. It's a pleasure to have you.
Well, thank you for the kind invitation, and it's always a pleasure to be back home to enjoy the culture, the weather. I have to improvise that, the weather, and seeing some familiar faces. So thank you for that invitation.
Yes, indeed. And of course, Doc, who's always here with me. It's always such a pleasure to have you. Good evening, Doc. How are you doing?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Grenada. Good evening to everyone in the diaspora. It's really a pleasure being here because I'm really looking forward to tonight's program. I want to welcome Dr. Matthias in person. And since I'm a person he always loves to, and 4 days passed and I haven't seen him yet, let's see how that works out. I hope it gets better as the week goes by. But it's really a pleasure having Dr. Matthias here, who's always ready to give us, counsel. I know I call him a lot in his office overseas just to get guidance. And Dr. Matthias is a treasure, a national treasure for us in the area of diabetes management. So Dr. Matthias, welcome home. There's no mango, there's no sugar apple, there's no governor, there's hardly any what do you call it? Golden apples, whatever it is.
Oh, yes. Let me stop you there. There's golden apples. I do have quite a bit. I probably have to try and find a way to get some to Dr. Matthias. I have a beautiful golden apple tree.
Hold on there. So I don't know.
Well, listen, guys. You guys act like if I'm a foreigner to my island, right? I have golden apples. I had some on Granon's Beach yesterday, and also I have the pawpaw, right? So chill a bit, okay?
All right.
You just showing off. Go on. I'm glad you got some though, because foods have been quite scarce, and although we've been asking our patients to indulge more as a means of snacking and just for a good balanced health, it's really been unfortunate. A lot of the things we like our population to be consuming, not just people with diabetes, people who are trying to offset diabetes as well, to make sure they don't become diabetics. It's just not being there. And the whole food security thing is one of the things I think we have to mention in our therapeutic basket.
Indeed. Very, very, very important indeed. So we need to get into our discussion because, the time goes by really quickly and we have a lot to talk about. We've been, of course, continuing the awareness, as part of Diabetes Awareness Month. And we've been talking a lot about it over the past couple of weeks. Tonight probably will be the final programming this series on diabetes. But of course, by no means we will stop or ease the conversation on diabetes and other chronic conditions that affect our people in such a significant way. So, Dr. Matas, I'll start with you early, and then I'll bowl the first ball, and then I'll hand over to Dr. Nixon so that you guys can carry on and put that expertise out there. Type 2 diabetes, and of course, over the years there has been various trends in medical management of the condition. Let's put it into context. Maybe just briefly, again, just talk about the type 2, what it is, and the importance of dealing with it.
Thank you. And again, thank you all who have joined us. And I do hope that you have your questions, and during the opportunity, you will extend that to us so we can help clarify any myth, misinformation, disinformation, or concern that you may have. As you know, diabetes is a chronic disease. And the reason why we address diabetes is because of its complications and what we are trying to prevent. We should understand that because of the high blood sugars that exist in diabetes is because our body has reached a point where it's incapable of controlling or distributing a glucose level effectively and efficiently throughout the tissues. And that is because we have decreased our insulin production. Remember, we need insulin within our body to control the blood sugar or the glucose. And if we do not have enough insulin, the sugar hasn't got a rhythm, in other words, to go to the fat cell, to the muscles, or to the tissue that requires that glucose. The sugar is high because, the liver is producing too much glucose because there isn't insulin to control that regulation of glucose from the liver. The sugar is high because the muscles and the fat cells are incapable of storing the excess glucose. The sugar is high because your kidney, instead of it releasing the glucose in the urine, it reabsorbs the glucose. The sugar is high because we have lost our central ability, which we call the neurotransmitters, to regulate our diet and our fullness. So you see, diabetes is not just a high sugar. It's a set of deficient or dysfunctional tissue capability to control the sugar within the body. So in that, within the past couple of years, the new medications we have for diabetes, the guideline says it must protect or prevent the progression of cardiovascular disease. So now any new medication we have out there to treat diabetes, before it gets approval, it must have cardiovascular benefits. So some of the old drugs we have in the past to treat diabetes, if today they come on the market for approval, they will not be approved. And hopefully we can go in details later. Mm-hmm. So the new drugs we have on the market to help us, or I should say within the diabetes area, is its function not only to lower blood sugars, but through that process, we have heart benefits, kidney benefits, vascular benefits. When I mention vascular, I'm referring to arteries and veins, etc. benefits. And to prevent the condition within our small vessels, the small vessels I'm referring to are the vessels within our eyes that may cause a problem with blindness, the small vessels within our kidneys that may lead to progression of that towards dialysis, the small vessels within our lower extremities that may lead to amputation. So these small vessels, we need to prevent their worsening. Also, the large vessels, the stroke that we may experience, and the heart attack. So to treat diabetes, we are preventing those small vessels complication, those large vessel complication, and in addition to that, improve our immune system, because high sugars will increase your risk of infection or decrease your ability to heal. So diabetes is not just a sweet thing or a sugar thing. We have to look at the complication of exposed to high sugars. And another point that has to be highlighted is that once you are constantly exposed to high sugar, you create an inflammation. And that inflammation itself may not be a sore or a boil, etc. I'm referring to more at the inner, deeper center of our cells that may have an effect on exposing us to cancer, because our body now has depressed immune system, and that may lead to cancer. There are correlations that shows that high sugar level decreases our immune system, and you may have increased breast cancer. There are other cancer exists. So you see, diabetes itself has I'm going to use this word, a plethora of complications that we may exist. And hopefully we can go in further detail. This is just an overview.
Mm-hmm. So Dr. Nixon, I'm handing over to you now. Of course, you will make your comments, and then you can bowl a few balls at Dr. Matthias.
Yeah, I hope you're a good wicket-keeper.
Oh yes, definitely. I'm not going to allow anyone to pass. I'm well equipped.
No ball passes here.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So good evening again. This is, as you said, our last week for this year, but not the last day for a lifetime of talking about diabetes. The truth is, we kind of need to get something done. Not just the healthcare providers, but healthcare providers and everybody else in the whole world, especially in environments where you have very high levels. Like Grenada, we're going to talk about Grenada, but we're going to talk about the diaspora, because a lot of us are living out there, living with diabetes and having those challenges. We're going to talk, we need to look at what also, because diabetics listen, but they also need to figure out, what can I do to make me well? It's very important that people with diabetes think, how do I participate in wherever all this information would lead me so that I can be well? What is my responsibility? Because I can tell you, we can talk from now till the cows come home, and your diabetes is not going to change unless the person with diabetes, or the person who's prone to diabetes, or the person who would have diabetes, or the child who will develop diabetes, and is the young adult that we've been seeing, has done things to prevent it. We the Healthy Caribbean Coalition is that organization that kind of like an umbrella organizations for organizations in the Caribbean that focus on chronic diseases in general, hypertension, diabetes, asthma, fits, whatever the things are that are long-standing these diseases. But there's been a lot of talk, especially of obesity, which is considered a disease, of diabetes, hypertension, strokes, and all other complications. Liver, we'll talk about liver failure tonight. We also talk about kidney failure, which is a big problem, all of that. But guess what? We've been working hard in the last decade, right? And what we're seeing is that the numbers are getting worse. The bad numbers are getting worse. In other words, there are more people who die from complications of diabetes, despite all the talk we've been talking, right? And I think we kind of need to go back to the drawing board and see, are we doing everything that's required? Not just us, the healthcare professionals, but how do we get our population to recognize the challenges that are facing all of us, right? And what do they need to do to become involved? So tonight, hear me. I want us to look at, and Dr. Matthias is going to speak to most of it. Look at what are the challenges to us. I think we just basically said it has gotten worse. And we're going to have to change whatever strategies, whatever plans we're going to put into place to make sure that we can conquer this crazy run downhill. This is a runaway train, And if we don't, we'll see the kind of deaths that we've been seeing in the last couple of weeks. All right. So I think we need to go back from the whole thing of education of our population, lifestyle, starting from our children and the childhood obesity and stuff. We need to look at what are we using as diagnostic tools. What is it we're using to figure out whether or not we have diabetes? Are we doing it on time? Do we understand what this is all about? And then when you do develop that, if you are diagnosed, what are you supposed to do? What are you responsible for? And then treatment. There are different modalities of treatment, whether it's diet and exercise or medications. Do we have access to the best medications? Are we listening to other stories that bother me? Because it's okay if a modality works, but if a modality is going to kill the other modalities that have been working, it creates confusion in the mind of our population that's been trying to just stay alive, right? How do we monitor our blood glucose? What is your responsibility as a person with diabetes to monitor whether your sugar is getting worse if you've had it before, whether you're developing sugar at all, and whether you have it under control. And talk about things like your diet and exercise. But the new medications that in a lot of places here in Grenada, we don't have access, we don't know. The new diagnostic tools and how do I monitor my sugar, the electronic methods as technology grows, all of those things I wish we can put into tonight's program. So Dr. Matthias, without any more ado, we talk about a change in things. What do you see though? Do you see any, and if you do, and I'm sure you do, any change in how we as health professionals can guide education to prevent and education to manage diabetes and its consequences? What do you see that we need to be doing? Is it same old and same old worse outcomes? Or what have you seen that you think can work for us?
You threw a lot at me here, and hopefully
I'm trying to let you pick up the time. Don't worry.
Yeah. Now let's look at the patient perspective. Yesterday was my type 1 and type 2 diabetic patients I saw in Grenans, and today I saw a patient in Grenville with diabetes also. So those are 2 days I usually spend exclusively with diabetic patients. And to be honest with you, it was a tough day because I've seen that within our environment that we are not moving forward in a way that I think that we should be. And I'll explain that. Patient X came into clinic for management of diabetes. Patient X, I asked, how long have you been diabetic? I have been diabetic for over 4 years. Who diagnosed you with diabetes? I was diagnosed with diabetes by physician Y. Patient X, what are you taking for your diabetes? I am taking Bush. That was the answer. How long have you been taking Bush? Since I've been diagnosed. I wrote that in a chart. This is 2024, and she's taking Bush. Patient X, what is your blood sugar? I don't know. Patient X, have you ever had a blood sugar done? Only recently, and here it is. I saw the copy of the blood report. The blood report showed that her A1C, the marker for diabetes, which we measure every 3 months, based on the life cycle of a red blood cell. Those red blood cells have sugar on the surface. So now let's start. This patient was diagnosed with diabetes not yesterday, not 2 days ago, several years ago. And she is still using Bush for treatment of her diabetes. Where have we fallen short? I'm not going to answer that question. I'm not going to answer that question.
Explain to the population before you go on. What does A1C of 11 mean? Or 11.5?
11 means, for example, normal blood sugars before every meal, if you are not diabetic, should be between 65 and 99. If you are not diabetic before meals, your blood sugar should be 65 to 99. A patient with an A1C of 11, that means her average blood sugar is over 250 before meals. So for over 3 years, this patient, well, let me not say that. Let me say, I know for sure, milligrams per DL. So she was glucose toxic. That simply means her sugar was markedly elevated. What damage has occurred there? We have decreased her immune system, so she's prone to infection. Number one. And the other damages that occurs, I didn't share with you after I examined her what I found, but we're going to put that aside. So here we know that education is something that we have to work up, empower them. So once a patient is diagnosed with diabetes, we have to tell them what we are treating and why we are treating, as I stated earlier in the program. That has to be addressed. Number two, we have to know what we are treating. We physicians may know that we are treating a certain level, but does the patient understand what a high sugar is? And what it caused? Oh, doc, she have never checked her blood sugar because no one has empowered her that if she's using Bush, the Bush should bring the sugars at a certain level. But the culture says we can use Bush to manage your diabetes. Don't get me wrong. We need to know what the Bush is doing. What is the blood sugar before you drink that cup of Bush? I use the word Bush in quotation marks. What is your blood sugar before you drink that cup of Bush? Tea. What is the blood sugars 2 hours after you have that cup of Bush tea? Is there a difference in the blood sugar? You tell me. I need to know that. So therefore, this patient has been drinking this Bush tea for a number of years, assuming that her blood sugar is well controlled. So again, we have to remove those myths. I know many folks may claim XYZ, but we can have a discussion about that later on the Q&A. Now, this patient doesn't understand what high blood sugars are, and we have to empower her. This patient has to understand what we are preventing. This patient needs to know what foods going to create the problem. But she's not. How are you going to know what foods are causing the sugars to be high? All right, you go to the nutritionist. Mrs. Brown going to be very busy. She's going to do her job. But we need objective evidence. The patient needs to know what is happening to the blood sugar whenever she has a slice of bread with some cheese and a cup of Bush tea.
With sugar.
Well, many of them told me today that they have no sugar in the Bush tea, in their Bush tea. So Alex, they said that. We need to know that. So they need to be monitored. Now we have to address this issue, the cost of monitoring the blood sugar. So this is where, our medical delivery system or national health system has to come into play to say, how can we make or have access to reasonable price of monitors so that patients can check their blood sugars to optimize their care so that they will know what foods are creating the problem or the portion. I usually tell my patients, eat anything you want to eat. But 2 hours after you eat it, check your blood sugar. Make sure that 2 hours after you eat, the blood sugar does not exceed 140. And you will be surprised with the answer and the steps they're taking. So again, we have to empower the patients. That's the first thing we have to do, educate them. Because with the assumption of Mrs. X that she is managing her blood sugars, it falls short on us who are managing or taking care of the patient.
Or supporting the patient, because that's what we should be doing.
Yes. Yeah, correct. Correct.
So, talking about monitoring.
Yes.
There are the old methods, and then there are newer methods, the high-tech methods. Can you just allude to that? Because we're coming down to this whole thing.
No.
And
okay, let's address monitoring. Why monitoring is important? All right. In our methods of the past, where you prick your finger and you get a blood sugar reading of 110, it's at that moment. 5 minutes from that moment, is the sugar going up? Is it staying the same, or is it going down? We don't know. But at least we get an idea of what it is at that moment. And we oftentimes, or we used to extrapolate that it will be in that range. So we will tell patients, monitor your blood sugars first thing in the morning. And patient will get perfect numbers. But remember, the day has 24 hours. Remember, the patient is stressed out. Remember, the patient is eating 3 meals and plus snacks. Remember, the patient there may be many variables that can influence the blood sugar. So we are not getting a true representation of what is happening throughout the day. But that's what we used in the past to help guide us on monitoring patients' blood sugar. Then we advance and say, for example, check your blood sugar before you eat, check your blood sugars 2 hours after you eat. If before you eat you were 110, you took your medication, you have your meal, and 2 hours later, you expect to be close to that range or even better. But if the sugar remains high, you can tell the patient, well, what you ate had high levels of sugar or carbs, so decrease the portion. Right? Or we may adjust the medication depending on what the patient is saying. Doc, I have already cut back as much as I can, so therefore, why not let's use other medication to help, etc. And this is where the nutritionist comes in to help. Okay? Let me say this first. The first line of management of diabetic patients is dietary changes and exercise. It should be reinforced at all visits. Dietary change, decrease your carb intake, increase your protein. Because you can't handle the carbs. The system is broken. Your pancreas is not working effectively. So you cannot let it work with, for example, in the past, you were eating 2 slices of bread. You develop diabetes. The pancreas cannot handle it. You have to decrease the workload, maybe 1, maybe half, etc. So remember, anyone who manages diabetic patients, dietary changes and exercise have to be reinforced. And you have to guide the patient towards that. And only how you can do that, and you will recognize that by having patients monitor their blood sugars at least 2 hours after that meal, and that will let them. They don't have to do it every meal. This is what I instruct them today and yesterday. Twice a day. Before breakfast, 2 hours after breakfast. The next day, before lunch, 2 hours after lunch. The following day, before dinner, 2 hours after dinner. Give me a bedtime reading. Give me an overnight reading. I want to know while you're sleeping if the sugar is high. So this will give us, so you return with these numbers, and we say, Ms. Jones, you are doing great for breakfast. But you see that lunch? That lunch has high carbs. Let's cut it back. Let's put a little more protein there. That is, takes
a longer time to digest, yeah.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
So adding to that, what I ask my patients is to write what they've eaten. What was the meal you eaten before? And I find that the people who are serious about monitoring their diabetes, so guess what? When I look at my list, that little extra slice, that little extra spoon of rice, the pella my wife cooked, I went out and I had XYZ, and instead of I could have had 1 slice of pizza and I had 3. So they become very aware, because I think it's important that we empower. We spoke to that empowerment of patients to be able to monitor, to be able to take control, to understand. And it starts with education, and not only when you become a diabetic. It starts with education from before, just how to live, just a healthy lifestyle. Because I have a feeling that a lot of the people we diagnose with diabetes, with those unmentionable levels of A1Cs have been having diabetes for a very long time. Right? So we can say you've been diabetic for 3 years, when in truth and in fact, you may have had diabetes for 6 years, and the body has been struggling to contain it. So I think that education also has to begin in persons who do not have diabetes or do not know they have diabetes, who might think that they're prone, who hear to talk about diabetes. We should all be looking out for it. That is what I think. Everybody should say, hey, let me make sure that I don't have sugar here. Let me start it. And I think it's important that healthcare providers, the doctor, the nurses, the people who advise on lifestyle, whatever, need to make this a point, something that lights up in people's brains, because they also need to understand what the complications are if we miss the gate, because we're going to go down the sluice. That's what's going to happen. So without frightening the patient, just give them that sense of awareness and a sense of responsibility. What we have done is not have what we call patient-centered management. You put them in the middle and you say, hey, this is what's going on. I'm a clinician, I will help. The eye doctor will check your eye. The podiatrist, you go check your foot and already decide when you're going to see each other again. Make sure you check the dentist. Make sure you see the eye doctor. Make sure you do all of these things. And explain to them why. I think we do not spend enough time with the patients to create that empowerment, that enlightenment, that independence that patients can create. Because our patients have been teaching me things these days, right? Because they're so empowered. They go out and say, I stopped eating this because I find when I eat that, my sugar go up. So guess what I changed for? Right? Or they've gone to nutrition and said, my goodness, I had a patient who the other day was actually calculating wrong, calculating from millimoles per liter to milligrams per deciliter. And it's fine. Yeah. And it was twice as high as it really was, because he was using the wrong multiplying, right? But I think it is important that all of us and my colleagues and everybody who we work with have to get on that bandwagon, because it's our responsibility to be able to empower the patient who says, boy, I don't like how my eyes look. Let me check my sugar. I don't like how my vision is going, right? Oh, I haven't been to the eye doctor in 2 years. Let me go and make sure that it's there. There is retinal screening that has been afforded, but patients don't know nothing about that.
Let's go back a bit. Let's go back a bit, right? Now, even before you are diagnosed with diabetes, all right, you may have symptoms to suggest that the sugars are creeping up. What are those symptoms? Increased thirst. You may drink about 3-4 sodas a day, 5. Not only water. We usually say, do you drink a lot of water? But if you drink a lot of sodas throughout the day, a lot of liquid.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, we have to include that. Frequent urination. Right? You may have, for example, some headache, some fatigue, etc. In the females, they may have recurrent yeast infection. The man may develop some impotence, for example. These could be signs of diabetes.
Unexplained weight loss.
Unexplained weight loss. Very good. Very good. You have been listening to the professor, right? Unexplained weight loss, which is excellent. I love that. Yeah, and those can be clinical signs and symptoms to say, all right, I need to see the physician. Now, when you get to the physician, we will do that blood test. That blood test is just a random blood test. If that random blood test with symptoms are over 200, you're already diabetic. You may do an A1C, which is a percentage of the average blood sugar over 3 months. And if that is over 6.5, greater than or equal to 6.5, you are a diabetic, etc. Now, some patients may have a number between 5.7 and 6.4. We use the word pre-diabetes. But if you are in that range and you have family history of diabetes and you have some of those clinical signs, I will treat you like a diabetic patient. I will treat you like a diabetic patient. 1, lifestyle change. increase physical activity, decrease carbs. I will treat you. And another thing, the females who had diabetes during pregnancy, which we call gestational diabetes, once they deliver, the sugar may improve. I will treat them as a diabetic because there is a high incidence, about a 75% risk of them becoming diabetic later. So I will treat them. So it's very important that these areas, that if there's family history, especially if that is diabetes, your risk is much higher. Right? I know we are talking about type 2 diabetes today, right? But hopefully we can give the type 1 diabetes a plug later, right? But these are things that needs to be addressed. We use the term pre-diabetes, but you may have, there's 10 to 15% of patients in the pre-diabetic phase may develop complication as the type 2. Let me say that again. You may have pre-diabetes. You can develop the complication of type 2 diabetes, which I mentioned earlier in the program. So it's so important that risk factors, family history, is very important. The symptoms of diabetes need to be recognized. And once it's recognized, you need to be evaluated by your primary care provider, so that they can check the blood sugars randomly or do an A1C to determine where on the spectrum you are. If you're on the spectrum, then you need to be monitored, as we shared earlier. And just to add a plug here, now we have continuous glucose monitoring. And the continuous glucose monitoring, these are devices via Bluetooth. You put a probe on the arm, and it can transmit blood sugars to this reader, maybe an iPhone or your Android or the reader that is provided. Blood glucose every minute, every 30 seconds, you will know what your blood sugars are without pricking your finger. And I must say today, yesterday and today, I had put about the Dexcom monitor. I'm not promoting anyone because there are many others out there, the Freestyle, the Dexcom, the Guardian, etc. But I was fortunate to come down here with 10 of those devices, and I only give the type 1, those young kids who are 13 and 14, and they are type 1 diabetics. And it's a break for them that they don't have to prick their finger for the next 3 months. So I give them supply for 3 months and to help them so that they can monitor their blood sugars. And I know the moms were very pleased when they saw it in clinic. You know, these kids came in with sugars in the 200-300s. And, you know, but it's nice for them to see what is going on so that they can adjust appropriately. So monitoring help us in terms of where the sugar is trending, where you are after a food, where you are after medication, and it gives a sense of the toxicity of the sugar intake. So I think that early phase education, the symptoms for diagnosis, being diagnosed, and the importance of lifestyle change and monitoring. All right, and I hope that gives a gist of things. In
a minute, can you just extend a little the whole issue of lifestyle change?
Okay. You have
1 minute.
Yeah, 1 minute, right? Yeah, diabetes. You know, I was reflecting on this. I would say type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle disease.
It is.
You know, it's a lifestyle disease. I was a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a colleague of mine. I said it's a lifestyle disease. Why? If we look at the recent data of increased weight, you know, within the past 10, 15 years, there is a correlation with that, with the increase of diabetes. I leave that alone. I think that explained it all. Right?
Yeah,
because of our lifestyle, with the consumption of inactivity, we are driving more often. Come on, guys, we have too much cars in Grenada. I was shocked. You know, folks are not anymore. The walking is not there anymore. You know, every time I come home, I'm just shocked with that. But that's a different story. You know, we are inactive. We are consuming more carbs, and as a result of that, we are storing we are storing that energy. And fat cells, they love it. They love to store energy, and they create this inflammation that creates the poor outcomes we have. You know, obesity is a disease. It's a chronic disease. It is now a chronic disease. Because the biology of fat cells is amazing today. And that's why some of the new drugs that we develop is targeting adipocytes, which are fat cells, which we call adipocytes. Yes. And the biology of that is amazing. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. So basically, you're telling us Grenadian people that we need to stop eat so much pasta. I hope you can't see me rolling my eyes, because if I continue, my eyes going to jump out of my head. I'm serious. Pasta, soft drinks, and a lot of the junk that we feed to our children, the fast foods that we buy, the cookies, the biscuits, the ultra-processed products that are not even considered foods. They just think that give us some energy. So we need to get kind of some of the things you said. We also consume it as adults, but we've been talking about childhood obesity and how it's been escalating. We're talking about seeing diabetics, and we have spoken about some of the people who are 13 and 14 might be children, but they have old people disease, which is a big challenge to us, because in 20 years' time, they're going to have severe kidney problems, they're going to have severe problems with their vision and all the rest, and they'll be 34 and 35 years old. Yes. Probably non-productive, probably losing their feet and all the rest of it.
Right. Dr. Matthias, just before you go, I just want to just plug in something here. From what Dr. Nixon has said, this is very, very, very important and instructive, because we're talking here about 13 and 14-year-old who in a couple of years is going to be at a point where they're full-blown diabetic, and they have to be... Well, if not seriously making the lifestyle changes, we'll have to spend a lot on medication and a number of different things, because even with lifestyle changes comes a cost. Now, I was reading today on the CDC website, and I was alarmed, and I just want to share it, and you can probably comment along with your response to Dr. Nixon. And it says the total annual cost of diabetes in the United States is $413 million, making it the most expensive chronic condition in the United States. And while you're responding, think about Grenada and your experiences, both yourself and Dr. Nixon.
So we'll come to that, actually. That's one of the questions I have in the bottom for Dr. Matthias. But I'm going to answer just one thing until Dr. Matthias speaks. Remember, it's preventable.
Good point.
Remember, we can prevent that. That is probably the most important thing for us to consider when we consider outcomes. Not just how much we spend, but what happens. And I just mentioned, when you have a 35-year-old who can't produce, who can't do nothing for the country, who already starts using up from the coffers, from the national the security, the social security, because you have to pay for the medications, you have to make sure they have hospitalization, they have care, they have to have free surgery, and all the rest. It's a great loss, because we all supposed to pass through this cycle where we grow up and we get taken care of, and then we become adults who produce and contribute to the coffers so we can have social security, leave those behind us. That doesn't happen. So what you have is people who are sick, relatively young but very ill, right? Who are very ill, who are using from the funds that should be taking care of the people at the end who are dying, and should be taking care of the young people to make sure they have vaccinations and good and healthy meals and all the rest. And here we have the people who should be producing who are unable because of illness. And that is unfair not only to them, but to the rest of the society. And therefore, I keep coming back to the whole childhood problem and eating biscuit and crap that we eat all day. We have shunned, in a lot of cases, our traditional foods. We have begun to think that our children deserve to have all that I never get when I was a little girl because I grew up poor in the country. So I'm not eating no fig and salty sauce. My children is not going to eat that because I eat too much of that. I'm not eating no callaloo soup without meat. My children are going to eat that because I eat too much of that. right? And I don't want to blog on. I don't want to. And I'm not saying that's all you have to eat. And I'm saying we need to make good choices that came with our traditional diet, and not have us import so many Bigfoot, Liquorfoot, corn curls, all the crap that we give to our children, high in fat, high in sugar, and high in carbohydrates, that really doesn't give their bodies a chance to even develop a proper immune system. I'm sure you can agree with me, doctor, right? Because they're not eating nutritious food. So having developed diabetes, which is also going to compromise your immune system, give what we call ingredient, putting more weight on clean sugar, right? And giving them a lesser chance of being able to remain well or to get well or stay well, because there's so much insult on that little body as it grows. We're going to talk about the cause at the end of the day. Yes, Dr. Matthias.
Let's look at this, all right? A 14-year-old who goes to high school came to my clinic with her mom on Monday. Mom has to not go to work because she has to bring her daughter to the clinic. They have to pay 2 fare to come to my clinic. I wrote a prescription, then they have to go to the pharmacy to get that prescription, etc. That there is a lot of cost involved there already, just by doing that. Now, if that young girl develops complication, she now has to see the eye doctor. She now has to see the podiatrist. And let's assume they live in Grenville and they have to come to St. George's. The cost of transportation coming there, the time from work, the productivity, you just name it. If we put cost, that piggyback to our discussion from last week when we discussed cost, we need to know the cost of a diabetic care in all the stages.
I think we lost Dr. Matthias there for a minute. Hopefully, he will be back at us. I think he's back.
I didn't lose him. Dr. Matthias, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I lost you for just a moment, Dr. Matthias.
Yes. So I am saying, once we understand the cost of diabetes,
measles, diabetes, AIDS, cancer.
Hospital, in other words, having a diabetes team in-house, so anyone who comes in with a diagnosis of diabetes, you have a team approach to deal with that management. So, and follow up and when the patient is discharged, etc. So those are the things we have to implement. So to the issue also that we miss here is that I always tell my diabetic patient, you're an addict to sugar. Because you're a hypothyroid center. So you always want that, and that has to be broken. You know, we always say, man, I love my sweets. You ever hear that? And they can't give it up. Because that pleasure center has been stimulated by sweets, and it needs to be broken. And that's why it's always an uphill struggle. That patients may have optimized blood sugars, have an A1C that is tremendous, 6.5. You compliment them, and the follow-up visit, it went back up to an 8. Because they're an addict. I tell them up front. You're an addict.
Well, actually,
whatever. And
our A1C labs are 6.2, the top.
The top. Okay, that's nice.
Caribbean,
all right.
6.2.
Great.
So,
I love that aggressive. I love that aggressive. Well, for example, normal range A1C that I use in USA is between 3.9 to 5.6. When you go from above 5.6 to 6.4, you're considered pre-diabetic. and then greater than you consider diabetic.
Yeah. So we've touched on some of the topics, but I think in time we could bring everything together. You know, my challenge in relation to management, once you've been diagnosed, because we're going to come to treatment in a while. You've mentioned some part of treatment, which include lifestyle changes. But my challenge is integrating patients, as I say, at the center of the team, right? And getting them to understand. So if I wake up this morning and I think I've been doing okay, right? And I've taken my medications, I've been going along, and my diet doesn't really change very much. I've been more or less under control. And I wake up this morning, my sugar is 200, or that's 10 about, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're using
correct.
Depending on what you should.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, I said, maybe it's that little drink I had last night. But then tomorrow, my sugar still is at 10, even if I've tried to modify it and taking my medication. I must be aware enough. You know, there's a program, you know, of the CDSMP, right? The Chronic Disease Self-Management Program. Because what it does is that thing that creates awareness, right? Make patients aware of what is supposed to happen in my life, right? And even our physicians need to understand what that program is about, all our caregivers. So we can make patients aware that, hey, my monitoring, my high blood pressure, my pressure goes up, my sugar goes up, or my sugar keeps dropping, and I'm eating the same thing. And you can put the monitor on the arm and they can check at 12 o'clock and it's 110. It's not bad. I've been 300 3 days ago. I'm just saying, right? And you can give them a monitor and they just see it. But when do they move? We have to create that awareness in our patients with diabetes, those things that we can monitor numerically. There's evidence in our hands, right? When to move, what to do. Do I call my clinician? Do I pass by the health center? Do I call my doctor? Do I go to the hospital if my sugar keeps dropping rapidly? What is my problem? Because there may be other situations that can mitigate a normal, what would be otherwise be normal. So I think it's very important that patients get that level of empowerment, that boldness that they know, hey, time for me to move here, because for the last week I've been checking my sugar. Although I haven't changed, my sugar is up at what? Is it my insulin is not working? Is my fridge too warm? Maybe I'm not seeing it and I'm giving myself 20 units instead of 30. Those kind of stuff. So patients know, I gotta move because I don't want to go back to have that potential for complication. That kind of self-empowerment I'd like to see happen, but it's gonna have to happen. Go on.
That's a very good point. 35-year-old female today I saw, she was on diamicron 60 milligrams. She was on metformin and Januvia. Doc, my sugar hasn't changed. It's the same for the last 2 months. I am consistent with my medication. So I hear you here. So I come to see what needs to go on. You know, so here we have a patient who is not seeing any changes in her blood sugar. By the way, her A1C was 9.8. All right, that's unacceptable. You have a young person who is taking medication that is not effectively lowering her blood sugars, assuming that she has made some dietary changes, assuming that she is monitoring appropriately. This patient should have picked that phone up or text or drop by the doctor's office, wherever. Doc, I know what's going on. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Something's going on. And that is what I'm seeing lacking in our midst, the continuity of care.
Because I think we're talking too much. I think we, as caregivers, are talking and all the platitudes we extend towards patients without encouraging them to be at the center of care, to know that, guess what? This is about you. I'm not going to be in your house. So if you want to eat 3-pack of whatever sweet biscuit, right? Or if you don't want to walk the 15 minutes, because we're not asking them to go and run like Linda and Victor. No 10 event here. We're just asking them to start getting moving, get your body to burn a little of that, the calories that you may have, get your muscles working so things can.
But Dr. Nixon, before you continue, I want to give patients credit. because they're doing the best they know of. And he said, because I sit there today and I just listen to the conference. I just listen when a mom says, and I know this is what she can afford, the banana and the fish, and even though her A1C was greater than 14%, an 80-year-old with an A1C greater than 14%. How for this elderly patient?
Simpler.
Not give her complicated stuff. And this is the thing that we have to work on. It's not just loading them up with a set of pills, but you get, that drives me nuts.
Information. Because of information that they don't even understand. How many of us sit and write little points on a paper? You don't write a prescription, but you take a little piece of paper. I have a box of paper under my desk that I keep pulling, and my patients laugh at me. But I can write down little things for them to do, right? And they come back next day. Docs, I've been following XYZ. My results better be better. You have to give them that encouragement and that encouragement. Right?
Just a minute. We need to take a short break. We're having a little internet issue. Your images keep dropping off. So we take a short break, rectify that, and we'll come back in just a moment. Yes. So folks, stay with us. We'll be back with you in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Cancer.
Welcome to the Super 6 Show presentation for this evening, Tuesday, the 26th of November, 2024. I am your hostess, Kijan Smith. Super 6 is a multi-jurisdictional game owned by Winlord Inc. and is played within the islands of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dominica, Grenada, and St. Lucia. Tonight's jackpot is valued at $454,000. We'll now get ready to select your free ticket letter. Good luck. Your free ticket letter is H. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back with tonight's winning numbers.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
Now you love Super 6 even more. With more money,
the jackpot galore. Play more, win more, have more fun. With more jackpot money,
Super 6 is my number one.
With the new and improved Super 6 team, the jackpot keep growing and growing
and growing.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game. Super 6, bigger jackpots, more chances to win.
Welcome back. Get ready for your Super 6 winning numbers. Good luck. The first number is 28. The second number is 23. The third number is 13. The fourth number is 7. The fifth number is 2. And the final number is 19. To recap, your Super 6 winning numbers are 28, 23, 13, 7, 2, and 19. Your free ticket letter is H. Tonight's winning numbers were drawn under the supervision of an auditor from BDO. Please contact your relevant Central Lottery office for further information on the payment of prizes. Thank you all for playing responsibly, and remember, with Super 6 there are bigger jackpots and more chances to win. Our next Super 6 draw takes place on Friday the 29th of November 2024. Until then, have yourselves a wonderful evening.
Abuse.
Okay, welcome back everyone, and we do apologize for the little hiccup we experienced earlier. It was a little internet disruption, but we trust that everything is back to normal. So, Dr. Matthias and Dr. Nixon, we're back. We're experiencing a little issue with the internet instability, but I think we're back on track, and we're rolling all right. So Dr. Matthias, you were responding to Dr. Nixon's comment when we had to break there, so you can take it from there.
All right, just to continue. So far we have talked about the diagnosis, etc. But I want to highlight the importance of lifestyle change. Mm-hmm. It's not making any dramatic change, just some simple changes. You know, as I said earlier, you cannot handle the carbohydrate load, the sugar load. That is to say, the portion of food that has the high sugar content. Because the organ within the body, the pancreas, is not capable of handling that load. In other words, the workload is too much. So you simply have to decrease the portion size. All right? You love to eat the provision. The provision has high starch in it. Just cut back on the portion. All right? Instead of 3 days a week, just walk for 30, 40 minutes. Just simple things like that, and you'll see some improvement. And you will be surprised. Let's say if you love to eat 2 scoops of ice cream. After you eat that ice cream, just go walking, and you will see how that walking will decrease. That blood sugar is a week. You know, let me share this with you. I had a patient I saw today. She came to clinic about my 3 sessions prior with A1C of 13. I made some adjustments with her regimen, and she has lost weight. And her A1C went down from 13 to 7. Do you know what she said to me today? Doc, I had to stop the medication because my spouse said I lost too much weight and I look like someone who have cancer. I'm complimenting her and her spouse. I understand that we in the Caribbean, we love to handle some meat and so on. I understand that. But she has done tremendous in my eyesight in terms of metabolic improvement, in terms of decreasing complication. But her spouse says she is too little. You know, those are some of the cultural barriers we have to deal with. You know, and I sat there. I mean, this is what we have to change. In other words, I use the word paradigm shift, how we look at things. We have to change it. You know, have conversation, not only with the patient, but with the family. Mm-hmm. You know, bring a whole team approach to the whole situation.
No, I'm saying this is very interesting, but and hence the reason why I sort of brought up the issue of cost early, and I know we're going to go into some more detail, but here's a situation. Did that spouse stop for once to think about what it may actually cost him in the long run?
Right, exactly. Well, which costs are you thinking about?
No, I mean monetary. I mean you. I mean this is you have to the medication. Are you prepared to spend thousands on medication or hundreds every week? Are you prepared to reach a situation where you may have to spend on dialysis?
Yes.
At the expense of a little meat, as you said, Doc.
Yeah. Good point. So those are the things as clinicians we have to confront. Some of my colleagues may say, "So what? Do whatever you want to do." But I sat there with her and I explained to her the importance. I complimented her on that because with her losing the weight, my next step is that as she improves her blood sugars through lifestyle change, is to start cutting off, decreasing, stopping medication, because she has made tremendous. I want folks who are listening to remember that if you're on insulin, it doesn't mean you're on insulin for the rest of your life. If you improve the blood sugars and you show me that the blood sugars, I gradually start decreasing the insulin because you have made a lifestyle change. Mm-hmm. You have cut down the portion and you are exercising. You don't need the insulin as much, and similar. So you show improvement. Right? Just like if you're a great student in school, the teacher may put you in the back of the class because he wants those students that need attention in front. I will put you in the back because now you can mentor others. You don't need to be in my face. I need you to get out there and let folks be aware of your lifestyle change and what you have accomplished. And those are the ambassadors we need. Sorry.
There's another component to that, Dr. Matthias, and it's the whole issue of these chronic diseases, diabetes especially, being something that affects our family. So what I would do would probably ask this spouse to come to her next clinic so he can understand why it's important that she loses the weight. And that she's going to get a couple because she's going to be really, 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 really good, because we know that patients lose weight and after a while they start looking fabulous. Right? Because their whole metabolism changes, all the toxins they had on board, hidden by the fat and all the rest of it, are gone, but patients look better. And I think we have to remember to consider that diabetes prevention is a family affair. Diabetes control is a family affair. And I remember when people say they're cooking that because they have diabetes, all the bland food, the Christophine and the steamed cabbage and the stuff. When in truth and in fact, having a balanced meal is probably more sustainable because it doesn't really, you don't feel like you really have to suffer. There's that kind of sacrifice is often unnecessary. And if you can engage your family in eating healthily, the people who stand a chance of getting diabetes within that same family are much better off. So this incident brings to my mind the thought that, this has to be managed as a family. And maybe, like I said, her husband can be included and he would understand better.
Correct. I agree with you. I agree with that. Yes.
So
I want you to talk about. Go ahead.
I was going to say, to let our listeners know that our telephone line is open. If they have questions, they can, give us a call in between, and so we can address some other questions. So the number, folks, 435-2041. You can give us a call. I know we've put a lot of information there, and you may have a question or two. So you can give us a call, 435-2041. And, of course, we'll be happy to share with you what you're seeking. So, Dr. Nixon, you can continue, and we'll take the calls as they come.
So we go to the big thing, the big elephant in the room, the whole issue of medications. And above all, I want you to speak to the newer ones that may not be available to us every day, but are accessible as otherwise, that have been showing better outcomes, including helping people to lose weight and all the rest of it. Can you just talk to the whole medicine regime that we're using and how we are advanced?
Well, before I touch base on the new medication, what we have available to us today is a class of drugs called metformin. And I must say, I'm hearing all sort of nonsense. I'm going to use the word nonsense or disinformation regarding metformin. Metformin has been out there for a number of years. And yes, metformin is reasonably cheap. The issue is that if you take metformin incorrectly on an empty stomach or with little food, yes, you will develop nausea. Yes, you will develop vomiting. Yes, you will have diarrhea. The recommendation is to develop a tolerance to metformin. You start at the lowest dose with your dinner. And then after a week, then you start one with breakfast and one with dinner. And then you can increase the dose accordingly. If you do not eat, do not take metformin. Wait until you get to that meal before you take metformin. I've heard out there today metformin interferes with your kidney. Now, the question here is, if diabetes interferes with the kidney or create problems with the kidney, yes, as clinicians, we decrease the dose until that critical level. It doesn't mean that metformin causes kidney damage, per se. It's the diabetes that is creating the problem, and when we recognize that the kidney is not functioning optimally, we may stop or decrease the dose. Metformin, one of the shortfall it has, after taking it for a number of years, it can cause vitamin B12 deficiency. Right? And also those who may have problems with dehydration, etc., taking it may cause something called lactic acid buildup. But these things are preventable, and you will be informed once you take the medication. There are case studies out there that shows that metformin is anti-proliferative, that means anti-growth in cancer cases, especially in breast cancer. There are a couple of cases like that out there, and it's being studied. So metformin is one class of drugs that works at the liver. It tells the liver, stop produce. That includes the diamicrons, the glipizide. What it does, it tells the pancreas, whatever cells remain, work twice as hard. Come on, work 24 hours a day, no matter if you eat or not. You already lost beta cells, and now you're still taking a pill that will even make whatever reserve work twice as hard. In the States, that is, we no longer prescribe sulfonylurea as a main drug. In the past, we used to, but we no longer do that. And I will echo that I would like to see less of the diamicron being used within our community. All right? The next class of drugs we have, we call it dipeptidyl 4 inhibitors, DPP4, Januvia. Januvia works and also in the gut level, helping optimize insulin action. Now, as we move on, we have some new drugs in the class called SGLT2 inhibitors. In other words, sodium glucose-like transporter inhibitor. Just use the abbreviation. These drugs work at the kidney. Whenever sugar comes to the kidney to be filtered, these drugs prevent the reabsorption of glucose. You pee it out. And surprisingly, this drug initially was promoted for diabetes management. But as the study continues, they saw some cardiovascular benefits. It decreased the relative risk of death, and it improved cardiovascular outcomes. And further studies show that this drug also decreased the progression of chronic kidney disease. And it decreases hospitalization. It acts as a diuresis, and those patients that may have congestive heart failure, it helps manage that. But the side effect is, I know you're waiting for that, it can cause urinary tract infection. So because the urine now is sweet, so therefore it can harbor bacteria and it can cause yeast infection. So we usually recommend to patients, whenever they take this drug, urinate, pee, get it out, drink fluids, don't hold on to it. But the benefits are tremendous. And I have started writing this drug in Grenada today. because they're both drugs. The Jardians and the Farxiga is available. Jardians is more expensive from what I heard from the pharmacists out there. So we can use that on our island. But I cannot give you the cost. I do not know what the cost is. But that could be worked out.
Okay. So
the other class of drugs is the... I'm sorry.
Yeah. We have a call on the line, so let's just take that call and come back here. Doctor and call, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, good evening, caller.
I'm a type 2 diabetes. I would like to know what fruits could I eat? Things like mango, golden apple, and sugar apple.
Okay. Thank you, caller. Well, we'll definitely answer you. All right? Yeah. So, did you hear the question, Dr. Matthias?
Yes, I did. Now, the mango, the golden apple, and the sugar apple are fruits. And the sugar in fruits is called fructose, right? The sugar in bread, pasta, etc. is called glucose. The sugar in milk is called galactose. The body recognizes all of them as sugar. So whenever you eat the mango, you see that sweetness, the body can't handle it. So you cannot sit and eat 3 mangoes. Why not do it? Why not eat 3 mangoes? 2 hours after you eat it, check your blood sugar and see what it is. And that will answer the question. So you can eat half a slice of mango, the face of the mango, right? Rather than the whole mango, right? Now, I cannot answer the question to know if golden apple, the green golden apple, will have as much fructose. I think not, but I'm not sure. I can answer that. But the sugar apple, you have the word in it, sugar, apple. I think that should tell you a lot, right? So let's put that aside. Don't touch that. That will send the sugars out, okay? Mango itself, you know when you get a good starchy, or even a Ceylon mango, or let's make it a Julie. I know they are loaded with sugar, right? So yes, you have to be careful with the portion and the frequency. I'm not telling you don't eat it, but just the portion and the frequency. That will have a problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's a very good point, because I think that's one of the areas that we're going to culturally have to change, to modify. Because people, when mango come and see, we sit on the base and stuff and we eat.
Yes.
To be satisfied. So we're going to have to get accustomed to teaching our patients how to eat the things that are so very available, quite affordable, right? And enjoyable. Like I tell patients, you can have a piece of mango, but you can't have the whole tree. You can't eat a whole wash basin like we're accustomed to doing when we're younger and we're active and we're running up and down. So thank you. And I'm glad that lady brought up some of our sweeter fruits. I'm glad those are the ones she brought up, because that's what people like. Mango, we like golden apple, which is in season now, and sugar apple, there's still some sugar apple hanging around. So I'm glad that she brought up those fruits in particular.
Right. Yes, indeed. Well, the time is going by very quickly. We only have about 5 or so minutes remaining. So,
can Dr. Matthias?
Yeah. So, Doc, I'll give you.
Dr. Matthias just finished the therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The medication.
So we talk about that class of drug. The other class of drug is called glucagon-like polypeptide 1. And those drugs itself work centrally. When I said centrally, now think about it. It's called incretins. Tomorrow I'm giving a lecture on the update of diabetes care in the 21st century, the incretins therapy. Those are new drugs. We all have incretins in our body. And those hormones help control our appetite, in other words, our delay emptying of the stomach. And those drugs are playing a very important role in controlling our intake and our fullness. They work centrally at our pleasure center. So we won't eat as much and we stay full longer. But we have to be careful with these drugs, because if you delay the contractility of our let's say, our GI, gastrointestinal system, that is the mouth, the esophagus, the stomach, the small, the large intestine, dealing with the gallbladder, the liver, etc. If we delay the juices in these things, it can cause problems. It can cause pancreatitis, right? It can cause gallbladder disease. It can cause constipation. It can cause nausea, vomiting. So these drugs should be managed by physicians so that when these complications develop, you can be managed appropriately. I'll be addressing that tomorrow because within our community, there are individuals that are compounding these drugs. And you may have complications from these drugs that needs to be adequately managed, right? Because there is a sequential dosing of this drug. It's effective because now it is used, number one, in arthritis, because it helps lose weight, so you have improvement of arthritis. It is used in fertility to help with fertility management. It is used to manage obesity for weight loss. It is used to manage, they now got approval for renal disease, in cardiovascular disease. But unfortunately, when you stop these drugs, you go back to square one. So that's why you need the physician to evaluate you and know how to adjust these medications. Because I have patients, instead of taking it every week you have to take it's prescribed. I have them now taking it every 10 days or et cetera, and just to maintain things. Because you have to really understand how this drug works and not having complications, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
I will include in the pharmacists, etc., on my discussion on that specific drug. And obviously, we have incidents.
Yeah, yes.
In a nutshell, can you tell us? In a nutshell, you have 1 minute because I see Godfrey ready to get up.
Mm-hmm.
In a nutshell, can you just tell us cost to the healthcare system, cost to families, from that standpoint?
Diabetes within a family, I will say, looking at it presently, is probably over 50% of the intake of salary. Because when I see the cost of the labs here on the island, the cost of the medication, the time they have to take from work, et cetera, the transportation, visiting doctors' fees, it is a burden. I want to know how they can afford that. So that perspective, it is. I'm not talking about complications yet.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The wound care, the laser treatment that exists.
So maybe we should talk about complications we should have another program. We say Godfrey, and really just look at diabetes complications, how they've affected us, especially the economics of complications of diabetes, because I don't think people understand everything that has to do with what complications are and how much it costs us, right? And the fact that we still have to go back to beginning by starting with prevention. What do you say, Dr. Matthias?
Yes, I agree. Yeah, that's something that you can put in your schedule as time permits.
Can you give us some recommendations then? You don't know us, you never been here, you didn't go to GBSS, you didn't go to Adventist school, you just, Dr. Nixon just said, hey, I met you today on the train in Virginia or wherever you live, and I'm asking you, hey, why don't you come and talk to us? Or just come and sit in a clinic and listen. What would you recommend for us being able to enhance, make better the lives of our diabetics in Grenada, including prevention?
Mm-hmm.
See, my experience for the past 13 plus years coming home and doing the endocrine clinic, it has been an eye-opening for me. I've seen some seasons when within a year, we did tremendous in diabetes care, when we were more aggressive with insulin use, etc. But there has been an inertia, a stagnation within our medical establishment, that they are not aggressive enough, that I'm seeing the lack of continuity of care that exists, and the disempowerment of patients in terms of their care. So I will recommend education on the patient part, that the physicians now step up their game and really understand you evaluate the patient. Mrs. John is obese. She needs that. Mr. K has heart disease. He needs that. This one is early in the disease. He may not need medication, just lifestyle change. Not and just empowerment. We can go on. But I think that it involved the patient, it involved the healthcare provider, and it involve even our organization on our island. Even though there are limited resources, they are a valuable set of folks who have the expertise and understanding, and they can guide patients where they can get the monitoring device, whom to see, etc. When the specialist is on the island, they can help. So please support the Grenada Diabetes Association. They are very valuable resources on our island, and I think important in diabetes care.
Right, wonderful. I can sit here and listen all night. So much great information. And I think this is what we need out there, so people can have a good understanding of how to help manage themselves, and live lifestyles that can lengthen their lives and improve, and I would use Dr. Nixon's word here, improve their wellness. It is very important. And I do agree that we can definitely do a program looking at the complications and, some of the additional costs that are involved. Yes, indeed. So, Dr. Matthias, I thank you so very much, for always, being ready to accept our request and our invitation to be on the program, to share. It is always such a pleasure having you. And, we look forward to having you again, if not next week, not too long from that. Of course, we know you do have a lot, but we're always happy to have you. There's an open invitation, and by all means, if something happens that you think you need to share with us, we're just a phone call or a WhatsApp message away, and we'll definitely be happy to have you on the program. So thank you once again, and of course, we wish you all the best on your way back. Dr. Nixon, anything in closing? 1 minute.
Thanks for that invitation.
I think he stopped again.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, Dr. Nixon, thank you for that invitation and robust discussion. Most appreciated.
You're on fast dial on my phone.
Yes.
And I really do appreciate the support, the guidance that I get from you, the success that I'm able to impart with my patients. Well, them succeed in managing because I try my best to empower patients. The point I would like to make is that this has to be integrative care. There has to be different levels of integration, again, with the patient at the center. We have to empower people. Often, we tell somebody they have sugar, they think they're going dead, and they just fall apart. We need to do the psychosocial support. That's one of the things you don't think about a lot. It's a chronic disease. People are afraid of losing their legs, and people get into denial and respond differently. We have to look at the team. I think it would be great if St. Andrew can start with that kind of intervention so we can get ahead and have patients who are not afraid to we've lost our link. Godfrey, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you now. Yeah.
I think not. So, you hear me? So I think we really need to continue this, not only the care, what are the preventative methods that we need to use? And it has to start. We talk about lengthening people's lives. They already have shortened lives because of chronic diseases. What we need to do is to show how do we start with our children. It is very important, because if we don't, we're going to lose them. We see the increase in chronic diseases like diabetes very early in our children, and that's already cutting on their life expectancy, how long they're expected to live on the day they were born. So hopefully we can come and really integrate. I think we also need to have some people who have diabetes coming on and talk about a success story, talk about the challenges, so other people can know that they've had, they're not alone in all of this. This is a common problem. You can have places where people can talk and explain, so get support. So
Yes.
I think we're breaking up. So I want to say good night to Grenada and to the diaspora and to Dr. Matthias. Thank you very, very much. We really appreciate your investing in Grenada and investing in our wellness. Thank you for coming back every so often, supporting us.
Yes, indeed. Dr. Matthias, thank you again. Thank you to all our listeners, our viewers. It was indeed a pleasure, and we look forward to being back with you next Tuesday at the same time for another Doctrine Call. Do have a good night. All the best.